Hello and welcome to Self Talk. I'm Rachel Astarte. Today, my guest is Kelli Calabrese. She empowers women to overcome stress, rejection, and fear after divorce to create a fabulous bonus life. So I want to welcome you, Kelli, to Self Talk.
Oh, Rachel, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, great. So tell us a little bit about how you became a divorce coach.
From the pain comes purpose. So I had decided very early on that I wanted to be a coach. I was actually 13 and I started in the fitness, nutrition, wellness realm, and pretty soon found out that it wasn't just the physical, but there was this whole mental side to things. So I got certified in the mental conditioning areas. And then of course you get to the end of the mental and you realize there's a spiritual component to this. And so I've been taking a body, mind, spirit approach to well-being in every garden of life for 35 years. But it was about 5 years ago when my husband of 24 years came home and said, my commitment to our marriage is zero. And he left. And
Wow.
that was my thing. It floored me. It emptied
Mhm.
me out. It took me to my knees. It made me question everything in my world. And I went on a 3-year healing sabbatical. And on that journey, I really came to identify who I was, my authentic self, and when I felt like I had really overcome the grief and readjusted in a healthy way, I felt very called to help other women walk
Mm.
them through this process. And at the same time, I had about 8 girlfriends who were also getting divorced. And
Wow.
I kind of watched what people were doing. And when we're in that much pain, we're going to do something. And I
Mhm.
wanted them to do something healthy. So that really launched this platform for me.
That's amazing to know that that's what you wanted to do at 13. That is pretty incredible. And then here you are. And it's almost as though, as painful as it was, that divorce kind of gave you that nudge to really make it a reality for yourself.
Yes, I had to stop the pain. I had to figure
Yeah.
out like, okay, this is like soul crushing. I
Mhm.
can't continue like this. I have to get rid of this bitterness, this unforgiveness.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to repeat this again. I want to have
Right.
joy again. And I know it's possible. I just have to figure out how. And I
Mhm.
did.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's so important, speaking as someone thrice divorced, that it takes a lot of adjustment and there is so much pain and grief. It really is like a death that you have to grieve.
It is, and I do have very many friends who are widowers, and I don't take any, of the pain away from what they go through, but it is very different. I mean, divorce is a death of a different kind,
Yeah.
but your husband didn't pass away. He's living across town with another woman, and you're watching him on social media, dating, take your kids out on vacation, and so
Right.
you've been either rejected or, somehow your marriage blew up. And it is very different than he was the love of my life and there was a tragic
Yes.
accident or illness.
Right.
It's completely different. And again, not to compare, but I do have a lot of friends who are widowers and it's a whole different conversation.
That's true. That's very true. And the part that you just brought up, that the person isn't gone from this plane. They're very close and maybe you have to actually find out what they're doing, which is a whole other level of grief. So do you work predominantly with women then?
I do, and I am not anti-men. I love men. I don't think they suffer any less, and I will work with men, but I really feel like my target is women. That's what I feel called to. So
Mhm.
I mostly work with women, but I have worked and will work with men.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about you talked a little bit about mind, body, spirit connection. How does that show up in your coaching?
Yeah, so anytime I go into a coaching session with someone, I always have an intake form. So I'm getting information about them ahead of time. So I can see what, some of the challenges and issues and concerns are. And I instantly start praying about that. So I'm like,
Mm.
okay, in my 35 years experience as a coach, and I have 3 science degrees and 30 plus certifications and all of that, but I always want to take it to the spirit realm first. Because in
Mm.
my mind, I might go, okay, stress. We need to breathe. We need to sleep. But
Right.
I'm like, okay, what is it that she needs? And
Mm.
I might get something totally different than I would have got in the world. So
Mhm.
I might get, she really needs boundaries,
Mhm.
or she needs a quiet place that she needs to set aside and be able to go to every day where she can
Right.
have, meditation time. And so
Mhm.
I always want to call in what I'm getting for that person in the spirit realm first before I go in and like put someone in the fetal position, like, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Right.
So my coaching just takes that approach first, and then asking really good open-ended questions and getting people to think differently, because it all
Mhm.
starts with a belief. You're believing something and it may not be true, whatever it is you're believing. That belief then becomes the thought then becomes the spoken word. Once you speak it out into the world, now you start to act on that. Once you act on it, it becomes a habit. That habit becomes your character. The character becomes your identity. So let's
Right.
go back to the belief. If I can ask a question that makes you go, maybe that isn't true,
Right.
now we can start to move forward.
Right. So what are some beliefs that women might have? And I am going to focus on women just because that's predominantly who you work with. So sorry, guys, just for just for a
Yeah,
sec.
and this,
But
this applies to the guys too,
yeah,
but
I was
sometimes
going to
there's
say,
differences.
maybe this does apply to them as well. But so what are some of um, the unhelpful beliefs that someone might carry around after a divorce?
Yeah, well, if the woman was left, and again, a lot of times it's the woman who leaves. In fact, right now, if you look at statistics, women are leaving more than men.
Mm,
It used to be the
hmm.
other way, but if you were left, you feel very rejected.
Yes.
No one went to the altar expecting their marriage to blow up.
Right.
So if even if you left, you may have left because you were very rejected or abused in the marriage. So there's this unworthiness that comes on them, that I wasn't lovable enough, or I didn't try hard enough, or I chose the wrong person, or whatever the situation was. It could have been your own, like maybe I was drinking too much, or I was looking at other men, or whatever. It may have been them. It's never 100% them and 0% you. I'll just
Right.
say
Right.
that.
Right.
You
Right.
do need to own what your part was, even if it was abusive and horrible, horrible things happen behind closed doors. We're not minimizing those, but women will get into, I'm rejected, I'm unworthy. So this whole spirit of just keeping you in this victim place. And this
Right.
victim energy is actually a decaying energy. So
Mm,
it's not even like, okay, status quo. If you're in victim mode, you're decaying,
mm,
dying. That's what victim is. So we need to get these women to rise up, out of
mhm,
this, to get back up again. Okay, you were knocked down 10 times, get up 11.
mhm.
And
Right.
so getting them to stand back up again from the unworthiness, there's also bitterness.
Mhm.
And maybe with good reason, because you weren't cared for and you were abused and you weren't protected, you weren't made secure in your marriage. And so you're bitter because maybe you tried really hard and it
Right.
just, chose the wrong person, or they had their own hurts and you were the target of it.
Mhm.
So getting them past this bitterness, depression is another
Mhm.
one. And depression is a heavy spirit,
Yeah.
anger. And these are all parts of the grief, from that
Yeah.
shock and denial and numbness to anger, um, fear, just searching, panic, guilt. I mean, there's so much that's going on. And divorce is called a life event for a reason, because so many areas of your life are changing. You're probably moving. You might be getting a real job for the first time in a while if you've been a stay-at-home mom. Your kids' schools may be changing. Your church may be changing. Your friend group may be changing. So there's a lot of chaos going on. So while that it's happening, there could be this incredible spiritual attack that says you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you'll never be loved again, you didn't do the
Mhm.
right thing, he left you.
Right.
So that's why the spirit part is really important, to speak truth and life over them.
Yeah. How do you bring spirit into something like this? And when I ask that, it's more along the lines of, as you rightly said, and I'm sure a lot of women who are listening right now are going, yes, yes, that makes perfect sense. I felt all those things, you know. Um, that guilt, that feeling of I'm not lovable, or even, and I want to talk about this in a minute, the sense of I always choose the wrong person. But let's focus on spirit for a second. How can someone bring spirit into the process of grieving the end of a relationship?
Yeah. Well, in my program or when I work with people, I do what I call a heaven experience. So I have them get somewhere comfortable, whether wherever that is for them, whatever place, if it's outside, inside a couch, just go somewhere quiet. And then the
Hmm.
highest thing that I can imagine is heaven. And that may
Hmm.
look different for everyone, but using your imagination is part of this. So imagine what heaven would look like. And then if you were just there and God was there with you, whatever that looks like to you, and
Hmm.
that you could come to God as a heavenly father and say whatever question you want to say, like, God, how do you see me? Like you're not surprised by this situation. You knew this was going to happen. You know everything. So how do you see me as your daughter? And just go
Hmm.
quiet and see
Hmm.
what answers that you get. And if you believe God is good, He is near, He is powerful, He's a good father, you're going to get some answer. And you'll know that it's Him because it's not something you would have said to yourself.
Hmm.
So, for
Hmm.
example, one of the very first encounters that I had, God said, I gave you big brown eyes like a doe. That's not something I would have said to myself, but you just kind of know in your spirit that you're hearing and you will hear. And the more you do this, the more you will hear. God is not going to go silent on you. And you might think, well, it's, something I ate or something I watched on TV or whatever, but you'll get confirmation on it as well. And ask for confirmation and you'll get things repeated several times. And
Hmm.
so while you're making these big decisions, you might say, Lord, should I buy a house or rent a house? Should I stay in this city? Should I move? I mean,
Right.
you can bring all of these questions and you'll get answers.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said there. We overlook how much assistance we have in the spiritual realm, as you said, whatever that looks like for you. And I was thinking, as you said, if God's telling you, I gave you big brown eyes like a doe, my next question would be like, and what can I learn from a doe? You know what I mean? What do I learn
Yes.
from that, the grace of that animal that you created? You
Yeah,
know,
and
how,
so be a knowledge person. Like go and look up a doe
Mhm.
and go, look at the definition of a deer and a female deer and, go and do those things because you will learn and you'll go deeper and you'll have more
Right.
understanding that you'll be able to rely on.
Right, right. And what I'm hearing from you too is that it really doesn't matter what your belief system is, because, for example, when we talk about God, God made man in his image. And so we are meant to be omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient, and all of those things that and Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. We have a direct connection to what was created. And so we're never alone, and we know we always have those resources at our disposal. And it can feel so alone when your partner has left you, and so it's lovely to know that you're not alone.
Yeah, and some people are feeling shame and
Yes.
guilt because
Yep.
maybe you blew up your family. Maybe you were the one who had to leave and you just carried the shame. Like, did I do the right thing? What about my kids?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm a woman alone out here in the world and I'm completely responsible for everything. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can feel a lot of shame and guilt as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So switching gears just a little bit, as a coach, having gone through such a painful divorce yourself, becoming a coach and coaching other divorced people, do you find that difficult? Is it triggering for you in any way?
It can be very heavy. I mean, it can be heartbreaking when you hear the stories and the things that have gone on. And I'm just so impressed by women and their resilience. And it can be. So I have to cleanse myself. I have to do all the self-care and I have to have my good morning routines and my evening routines. And I can't carry their heaviness and their burdens with me. So I have to
Mhm.
be really careful about that. So the self-care as a coach is really important.
Yeah, yeah. And I was going to ask you, how do you prevent burnout, compassion burnout?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly taking in new information and encouraging myself. So I have a team of people around me who are wise counsel. And so I'm always getting, information from them. And I just have to press in every day myself and line my life up with the truth. So, okay, I am protected. I am provided for. I know where my hope comes from. I can refill myself with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, because what's in me is what's going to come out of me. So when
Exactly
life
right.
gets hard and I get squeezed, if there's bitterness and anger and depression inside of me, that's what's going to come out. But if there's love and hope and encouragement and peace inside of me, that's what's going to come out. And that's what I want to have for my clients.
Yeah. And by doing that work for yourself, you're modeling that for your clients, you know, that you can go through this, you can go through this difficult time and um, be healthy on the other side, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
and it is a journey. The name of my company, the brand for this is Intentionally Fabulous. And I had a coach help me, a branding coach, come up with the name. And it took us several days of sitting down and really, wordsmithing this. And he said to me, "But Kelly, you're not there yet." And I wasn't. I mean, this was like 3 years ago. Like I was still just heavy and, depressed and bitter and I hadn't arrived yet. And you can't fake that. So I can't get on the stage and go, "There's this whole fabulous bonus life out there. Like you've got to tap into it." Because 3 years ago, I still had a lot of work to do. But now that I'm on the other side of it, I can empathize with where people are and really give them hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So I wanted to circle back to one area in particular that I hear a lot from my psychotherapy patients. I've certainly experienced these questions before, but what what would you say to someone who feels as though they attract the wrong mate all the time or often?
Yeah. So you need to know your core values. So what's important to you? Are you looking for someone you can trust, someone who has integrity, someone, who doesn't have addictions to destructive habits? You need to really sit down and do some soul searching yourself. And one of the things that helped me was I looked at the men in my life. I'm like, wow, I love how courageous this one is. And I love how this one, just loves being a dad, and this one is so adoring, and this one is so generous, and this one is so wise. And I kind of looked at the men in my life and picked out some of the top qualities, and I made my own list of these are the things that I value. And so you have to have a no compromise list. For example, I'm a clinical exercise physiologist. I've been a health professional for decades. I am not going to date someone who's a smoker because I can't go into the relationship going, "I'm going to get him to quit smoking. I'm going to
Right.
change him." Like, no,
Yeah.
I did that with my marriage thinking I can fix this. I can change this. And it was, 26 long suffering years of trying to change someone who didn't want to be changed. So you have to have that list of the non-negotiables and start there. Then there's the nice to have list. Like, I really wish that, he liked to ride bikes because I like to ride bikes, or whatever your thing is. You want to dance, you want to like someone who travels or loves the beach. So you have your nice to have list, and then make sure you're not giving up on those non-negotiables, and don't rush. I mean, take your time. You need to get to know someone before you're, sleeping with them. And, that's one of my rules. Like
Yeah,
that's just not going to happen, because now your souls are tied together, and now it's just
that's right.
painful and messy if it doesn't go well. Now you're trying to make something work that maybe never should have been in the first place. So working on yourself is the most important part, because you're going to attract the person at your level. So if you're depressed and addicted and angry, you're going to attract someone who's depressed, addicted, and angry. If you're an enabler and a fixer and a perfectionist and a control freak, you're going to attract someone who's lazy and foolish, who's going to allow you to do those things.
Right.
So fix your perfectionism and your enabling and all, get those things right. And now you're going to attract someone who's more whole and healed and healthy.
Yeah, that all of that 100% makes sense. And that's something too, when I work with my patients, that's why we work on what I call the foundation of self. Who are you? And getting to love who you are is also extremely attractive, because I also get patients who are consciously or unconsciously almost desperate to find a partner. And that desperation, as you mentioned, does bleed out into the kind of person that you attract. So you might overlook some of those red flags, or you might overlook some of the things that you wouldn't really want in a partner, just hoping this time it'll work out, you know?
Yes. You
Mhm.
have to be okay being alone. Real. I mean,
Yes.
I did not go out on Sundays for years because it was hard for me. Because I felt
Mm,
like everywhere I went was couples and families. I mean, they were in the grocery stores, the restaurants, church, I mean, everywhere. And I just felt like I needed to be okay being alone. So I sat in the house on Sundays for the most part for a long time. And I would read and I would breathe and I would get out in nature and I would write and, just do all the things to work on me. Now, when I go out and I see families, I'm like, bless them. Like I am championing them, like fight for your marriage, love each other. Like I
right.
love to see families. It excites me. It gives me hope. And, one day I will have that again, but you need to be okay being alone. A man is not going to fix whatever it is that you're longing for. But when you get healthy and whole, then you can attract that person. And it's never going to be perfect. It's not like, oh, we've totally arrived and everything. There is no perfectionism, but you can't rely on a man to fill those things. But also, a man may be part of your healing. So
Mhm.
at some point, you may receive restoration in that next relationship that didn't happen in the last one or two or three,
Mhm.
that you're like, wow, this really can happen, but it's probably not going to happen until you get rid of the depression, anger, bitterness, and so
Yeah.
on. But they
Yeah.
may help with that.
Right. Right. And to add to that, I love what you said about not being afraid to be alone, and that kind of speaks to what we were just saying too. When you are connected to spirit, you're never alone. You're never alone. So what you're doing is you're celebrating who you are, right? And so a relationship becomes that bonus. It's, oh, it's nice to have that on top of this. If I don't have it, if it's not right, I don't need it, because I'm satisfied in who I am and the life that I'm living. I think that's what you were getting
Yes,
at.
exactly. And I do imagine that I will be remarried one day and I will write a list like, wow, I would really love these qualities in a husband. And how would I feel if I had a husband with these qualities? And what would that look like? I get into the details of it because now you're putting it out there
Right.
and you're open to receiving it, however it looks, however it might happen. And then you'll know when you know. I mean, your spirits will align. You will recognize each other because he's probably out there, praying for you and the connection will happen at some point. But if you're just going through man through man through man through man, you're going to make the process a little more painful, I think, that way.
Right.
And just
Right.
letting the energy of God and heaven work in your favor and be
Right.
patient. Sometimes we need to be still and patient for a while. We don't know God's timing. I mean, he makes all these promises and we stand on them and we believe them. He says it's going to be hard, but he gets us out of it, but he doesn't tell us when.
Yeah. That kind of that reminds me of something that I say to patients as well, and have written about. You don't find a soulmate, you recognize one,
Yes.
and there is that connection there. Yeah, beautiful. So bef let's talk a little bit about the darker part, that sort of dark night of the soul, moments before you can come out of it. And the reason I want to bring this up is we've been talking about the positive aspects of what happens when you get out of that. But if we could just normalize the darkness that we experience, and you, I'm sure, have plenty of experience sitting with these women who are in pain. Um, how can women feel like what they are suffering, although every experience is unique, but how can they feel like they're not alone, or that what they're feeling is natural?
Yeah, I mean, the community is important. So I do have a community on Facebook called Intentionally Fabulous, and it's a place where you can go that is safe. You can talk about the hard things. We support and encourage each other. We try and laugh. And so the isolation is kind of the dark side. Like it's okay to be alone and press in and have quiet time and be intentional and use that
Right.
time productively and receive and listen, but don't spend too much time alone because you can go the other way and really get into a dark place. The enemy loves to isolate you. When you're
Mhm.
alone, he can lie to you. He comes to kill, steal, destroy, and he can really keep you down if you're alone too much. So find a community where you are supported, people that are not just a complaining fest, not a gossiping fest,
Sure,
not
sure.
catastrophizing, because we can tend to get into this, and I'm like, and then my car's not selling, and then the dog got sick, and like, not that. I mean, you might need a session with, someone like yourself where you just need to get things out of you, and that's
Mhm.
perfectly fine. And sometimes we just listen because you need to know you're not crazy. You just need to come in and go,
Yeah.
and I was waiting all week for this appointment on Thursday at 3 o'clock, and I just need to get this out of me so I know I'm not crazy.
Mhm.
So you can't do this alone. I mean, trying to go through divorce alone is like taking a baby aspirin if you have cancer. You need
Mhm.
community, you need support, and multiple ways. So maybe you have a breath therapist and a yoga instructor, and you
Right.
have a friend group, and you go do boot camp and martial arts, or you need to get out and get up, because if you sit there too long, you're really prolonging the process. You're not meant to stay in grief, and it's messy. You do get triggered. It's not like, okay, better, 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 better. It's like, "Ugh," and then you
Yeah.
see his picture on social media, and then you find out, he got engaged, and then,
Yeah.
and then, you lose your job, and then the kids turn against you. I mean, it's just hard. So
Yeah.
you can't do it without people. You need connection. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. And I think that's really important. And you offer that, which kind of leads me into my next question. How can listeners find you?
Yes, I would love that. So the website is intentionallyfabulous.com. I do have lots of free resources there. I do have a program. It's an 8-week program called Intentionally Fabulous, and it takes them through identity, forgiveness, renewing your mind, self-love, gratitude, divine health, abundant wealth, and what I call joy, resurrection, and celebration, which is getting to
That's a
the other
lot.
side. It is. Yeah, no, there's a lot in there as a healing guide. There's lots of great interviews with top experts. And then the Facebook page, Intentionally Fabulous, go there. I have over 100 videos on YouTube all around this topic. They're anywhere from 6 to 9 minutes, and just choose the one that you need in that moment. Maybe it's about grief, maybe it's about money, maybe it's about your health. So we cover all the things that have to do with divorce.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. It's been lovely speaking with you. And it's it's just so much information that I think will be really helpful for a lot of people, men and women.
I
So
hope
I
so.
appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rachel.
Hi, this is Rachel, the host of Self Talk with Rachel Astarte, also known as the best podcast you've never heard. Well, let's see if we can change that. If you would take a moment, please, to hit the subscribe button and maybe even that little bell next to it that lets you know when we release a new episode, which is every other week. Thank you so much.